Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 237 of Motorsports Today, recapping an exciting weekend in racing, a triple header weekend of NASCAR, INDYCAR, and F1. We have a full squad for you. Eddie Kalegi, Adam Tropper. Tropper is joining us from outside Madison Square Garden. He's had quite the pickle when it's come to travel today, so he's currently sitting in New York City, and that's only the second craziest setup that anybody has on the show today. So Tropper's with us. Tyrell Baker and Drew Jewah are with us in their normal spots. Drew's even got his cat with him. And then we have a special guest, Tim Moore, who has been on the road constantly this season. He's already covered 4 NASCAR races. He just did a back-to-back, and he is currently on the drive back from Martinsville with the phone set up. This is an incredible POV right now. But Tim, just give us just your thoughts, initial thoughts on the trip and how everything's been going for you before we get to the race.
Well, I'm sorry, I don't have money and I'm in a meeting. I'm sorry.
Oh, well, there we go. That's a great story. That's my New York City experience, by the way, in a nutshell, Tropper. Especially past midnight. But overall, I'll tell you what, Martinsville, where do I even begin? First off, if you didn't see the video, I got to try the Martinsville hot dogs. As I told Eddie back when we were at Darlington last weekend, and I said in the show Monday before we went to Darlington, I'm excited to go to Martinsville because for me, the Martinsville hot dog was a top 5 bucket list item all time, and to get to try it, I'll tell you what, I tried the media center one first before I recorded anything. It was one of the worst hot dogs I've ever tried, and I was highly advised to go to the hot dog stand in the infield and not eat it from the media center because it's significantly better. So I brought $7 with me, got myself a 4-pack, and I'll tell you what, again, I'm not a hot dog guy. I love, Nathan's hot dogs, Boar's Heads, Sabrett's. I would gladly eat a Martinsville hot dog, specifically from the hot dog stand again, over and over and over again. It was so good, and it definitely made my weekend because I'll tell you what, the races, if you were putting the tone of this season, I guess you could say, the O'Reilly race wasn't bad. The Cup race definitely was not bad. But as we know with this change of the package, as we know with things, listen, not every race is going to be your cup of tea. It's not going to be exciting. It's not going to see, a whole lot of chaotic passes. Truthfully, I didn't see much change from last package and this tires. And these tires, and of course, they brought the same tire package to Martinsville this year, just only with the horsepower change going back to the race in the fall. And to me, I felt like we saw pretty much the same race. So overall, part of the weekend, listen, sometimes you don't have to be the fastest to win races. We proved that in NASCAR. You just have to have the right strategy and right opportunity. Chase Elliott proved that, and I know we'll talk about that in a little bit. You got to feel gutted for Denny Hamlin because this is his first race back really in Virginia since the incident in the offseason and how bad he wanted to win this race. But overall, you got to give props to that 9 team now, Gustafson, for all the hatred a lot of people give him. Well, listen, I read the comments fondly this weekend about Chase Elliott, about how people feel about him and his crew chief. I think he shut the haters up is the best way I could put it as. So a good job for them and for Hendrick to end a drought that, to be honest with you, lasted way too long for standards of a team that's supposed to be a top 3 team in the sport.
Yeah, good way to summarize it. Reminder, Motorsports Today, we're here live on Mondays, 7 to 8 p.m. on TikTok, Fridays, WRSU.org. You can follow us on the socials at Motorsports Today. Find us on the web at motorsportstoday.net. It's a big weekend for us. We had a triple header of coverage for the first time ever. NASCAR Martinsville, IndyCar Barber, ARCA East ended up having a wild race at Hickory as well. Fisher Gennady was there. All of our compilations coverage going to be dropping throughout the week and already up from the past weekend, so you can check that out. If you are enjoying this show in the YouTube or Spotify upload, here is our compilation of interviews from Martinsville Speedway. Welcome to the interview compilation from Motorsports Today's maiden trip to Martinsville Speedway. The paperclip. Tim Moore was there for a full weekend of action, starting with the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. A wild race with some crashes. Lee Pulliam making his debut. The short track ace missed a shift, caused a big stack up, but rallied for a great run, a 5th place in his JRM debut, and Pulliam was emotional after the race.
Yeah, I mean, just unbelievable to get to do this and be on a stage like this, and something that I've wanted to do my entire career. And I've worked really hard on myself physically, mentally, and to get back into good racing shape. And, man, I felt like we was going to have a good shot to contend for the win there, and we had that uncontrolled tire. And when we got sent to the rear, I didn't know what was going to happen. But Phillip gave me a shot. You know, he caught an aggressive strategy, and we took tires early. And once I got the lead, I set sail. Just didn't have enough rear tire to hold them off right there at the end, and just made a couple mistakes on the restarts. I think just lining up beside those guys, they could launch a lot harder than me, and I was trying to be aggressive and just made a mistake. So just hated tore up some race cars there, but proud of everybody's hard work, proud of everybody on this Folsom Fence Supply Chevrolet. Just got to thank all my partners, Carolina Drilling, Jerky Boys, BRC, Exalta, the Hendrick Engine Shop, and everybody Chevrolet.
Pulliam's JRM teammate Justin Allgaier made it 2 in a row with a victory at Martinsville Speedway, and his boss Dale Jr. had some high praise for the driver of the number 7 Chevrolet, comparing him to a Cup Series legend.
Well, I don't know. He's got a lot going on. He's got his family, his kids, all that, and the tire business, and he's got a lot of priorities that are shifting around in that sort of top 5 in his life at this point. And racing has always been at the top, and that's for him to answer how much more or how much longer that he can sustain what he's wanting to do, and because eventually, he's got the tire business up north or whatever, I think is going to be pretty important and a big part of his life going forward. And so he's kind of coming to a crossroads, but I don't want to speak for him. He's kind of like Denny, I guess, an anomaly, just as good, if not better. At this age, you see a lot of guys, they I'll be honest, I've asked this question on my podcast from a lot of veterans, like, why do you slow down? Why do you lose the edge? And there's a lot of reasons, but one of the things, he's still got his health. He's still got a lot of things that sideline some guys and slow guys down. And I think the one thing that I guess I'm surprised by him and Denny is they are willing to take the same risk that they were willing to take the first time they got in a race car.
I'm not going to ask you if you feel like you have comparisons to Denny Hamlin, but
that's a loaded question, like last week with the Hall of Fame thing. So go ahead.
So I'm sorry. Well, yeah. So I guess it's just more of, do you feel like at this point this is the best you've been performance-wise with Junior Motorsports?
I'm going to tell you. So number one, we have a lot of Jim still living within the 7 group, right? A lot of what we run on a weekly basis is still stuff that we develop together. Stuff that, even after some of these races that maybe we didn't get to try last year that we wanted to try this year, that, Andrew has come in and said, okay, we're going to do our job to make sure that we had good races last year. Let's make those better. We had races that were okay last year. Let's make those better. We had bad races last year. Let's make those better, right? And I have a great notebook to start with, and I'm not too proud to say, hey, we're gonna start here and figure out what this looks like. Andrew spent a lot of time this offseason just working on camaraderie, right? It is not easy to have 5 teams in our shop that are all battling up front every week, right? It's not. You don't want to. You want to help your teammates. You want to see your teammates thrive. But when you get beat by your teammates, as we did last year by Connor, it makes you want to dig deeper. And Andrew's situation, he felt like last year didn't go the way that they wanted it to go, right? And he wasn't sure what his crew chiefing job was going to look like in 2026. And when he got the opportunity, he said, "Look, I'm not gonna waste this opportunity. I want to go win races. I want to go run up front." And saying it's one thing, putting it in action is another, and we've done that. And if I'm also being frank, I'm probably in the spot of my career where I'm having the most fun. I know that sounds dumb, but I know that the days are coming closer to an end than they are to starting. And I'm watching these young kids figure it out in what seems like minutes. What used to take us years, it seems like they're figuring out minutes, right? And so, I'm proud of what we're able to still accomplish. But I also spent a lot of time this week talking to a bunch of drivers that, trying to help any way that I could for when we got here to Martinsville. And, Lee sat up here on the stage. He's not young. He's a little bit younger than I am, but he's not young, right? But he sat up here on the stage. He got emotional. And it was cool for me because the guy's done it all. He's seen it all. He's lived it all. He's an ultra successful race car driver, and you could see the emotion pour out of him. I keep telling our guys, I said, we don't have to do this. We get to do this, right? You got to appreciate the moments. And look, I don't know. I've said last week, I don't know when or if the last win is here or ever will come. But I'm going to enjoy every one of them while we got them. And I would bring my trophy into here, but I don't know that I can carry a grandfather clock. I'm not that strong.
Junior congratulated Lee Pulliam after the race. Has to be proud of the JRM effort so far this year. But Dale was in the news this week because of a clip regarding the Hall of Fame on his podcast, which now begs the question, does Justin Allgaier have a Hall of Fame resume?
We didn't have that in the notes. I know a lot of people thought that we drummed up that conversation to try to get all the clicks, but sometimes that stuff just happens. But we didn't even have that on the sheet. And I happened to be in the committee trying to get the ballot going for the Modern Day and the Pioneer, and there's some conversations going on there. And I was a little nervous to talk about it publicly. Last year was my first year, and they were like, you can go out and talk about this, but don't tell anybody what was said in the room. But you can tell people who you kind of voted for, and you can tell people your opinions. So I was a little more comfortable, I think, this time post meetings to have conversations around the Hall of Fame. And one of the most, I think one of the more, challenging conversations that's been a topic in the last couple of years was AJ. And I thought, man, I wonder how that conversation might go in this room during our podcast. And that started the conversation that led to talking about Justin. And because I was thinking in my own head, I'm like, man, if Justin won 6 or 10 more races and another championship, would he not find himself on the ballot at some point, possibly? I really think that gets him in there, maybe on the fringe. I don't know that it gets him in the Hall of Fame. The only thing about that is when I sit in the room and we got all the ballot up on the wall, right? I look at that ballot and I go, they're all Hall of Famers. And somebody in the room always says, let's just vote them all in. But you only get 2 or 3 a year, right? And so they're all Hall of Fame. They all should go in. But we have so many Hall of Fame, nearly first ballot guys literally going to be in the field tomorrow. And every year, 1 or 2 more of those guys pop up in that ballot, and they keep that guy that's 3rd, 4th, 5th every year. They keep him in 3rd and 4th and 5th, right? So like a Harvick or a Truex, those guys come in, and you're like, well, shit, of course I'm going to put him in. And so that keeps that fringe guy, that 3rd or 4th or 8th or 10th guy on the ballot, that keeps them literally on the ballot every year and nothing more, right? So I don't know I don't know the solution to that, but it's tough to see. But you got guys coming out of the sport right now that are absolutely Hall of Famers, no question, absolutely Hall of Famers, and they're going to get your vote.
Transitioning to the Cup Series, Denny Hamlin's had a hot start to 2026 as both a driver and an owner, but there are still concerns about his lingering shoulder injury. Hamlin addressed it during his presser on Saturday.
How are you physically feeling now that you've faced a variety of tracks? And you also had mentioned as well that there's a lot of things that you're going to be missing out on in terms of preparation that you like to do but you can't do. How have you been able to adapt to that to this point in the year?
Just get fatter, truthfully. I can't play the sports I like to play. That's about it. But it's holding up well for to be at this point. A lot of it too is that I'm really being cautious with all the other things to not aggravate. So when I come here on the weekend, I know that it's like 100%. It's as good as it's going to be. So it's not too bad. Last week, I got last week wore me down pretty good. It's been a while since I've been that wore down after a race, and certainly felt it in the shoulder. But I feel like if it stays on this pace, I'll be fine.
Well, if Hamlin's driver stays on the pace he's on, 4 wins in 6 races to start 2026, he's on his way to history. And even with 23-11 success, Chase Elliott and the Hendrick Motorsports camp are more focused on themselves than looking up at that 45 team.
Well, they were really strong to end last year too, and credit to them. They've done a great job, and I do think that they've also had some more time with their bodies to kind of get things dialed in. I think that with time we can, get to a place that is that strong too, and you kind of give an opportunity to build a notebook and give an opportunity to get into a rhythm and make things better. So they really haven't had any deficiencies, I guess, to answer your question. They've been really strong, all different track types, and just really seem like they've done their homework really well. So like I said, a lot of credit to all those teams. Not obviously Tyler's been really good this year, but I think they've all done a really good job. So we certainly strive to be that strong too.
In the early season, do you find yourself looking more at the 45 or the Gibbs bunch, would you say?
I know this is going to sound crazy, but I really have not compared us to them at all throughout the start of the year. I have really put a lot of my emphasis and focus inward and just where we are and where we're at as a company and what we're fighting globally as a company, because I think we all know internally what we need to be at our best, and I think right now we're working through all that. So when I look at last week, I thought a lot of our issues were collective across the board of all 4 teams, and I thought we had a really good direction of which way we wanted to go from there. So we have to worry about ourselves a little bit more right now, I think, than comparing to whoever.
Even with Reddick's historic start to the season, he's still hungry.
I've been so bad here for so long. I'm very motivated to perform better here. Bristol's a place, like I said, when it was dirt, I had opportunities to win at, but when it's been concrete, I've been off. So I have plenty of reasons to stay motivated when we go to these tracks that I've contended it for wins at before, or the ones that I've struggled at.
Reddick's teammate Bubba Wallace hasn't been too shabby either, sitting 3rd in points through 6 races, and Bubba has had a clear attitude and mindset shift since his big win at Indianapolis last summer.
Are you saying I'm less of an asshole?
I never said you were an asshole. I tend to think you're not one, by the way.
No, I'm kidding. I think Indy, it was a moment for our team, a moment for me to be locked in to the ancient playoffs. That's well written down in the history books. The playoffs are gone, right? But it gave you a sense of, I had a month of races there after to where it didn't matter. We were already locked in. And I've never had that, right? I've been fighting for my life each and every time, go down to Kansas, we're not in the playoffs, we win. Talladega, we aren't in the playoffs, we win, right? So it was something that's like, oh, this is kind of how you go about the weekend, right? And so I think showing up with confidence in the car has attributed a lot to what you've been seeing this year. Less questioning of myself and more believing in self and believing in the team.
Martinsville marked the first short track points race this season with NASCAR's new horsepower package for tracks under 1.5 miles. Zane Smith and Kyle Larson both gave their expectations for the weekend before hopping in their respective cars.
I don't know if more power is the answer or what. I don't have quite enough experience with multiple different cup cars or whatnot, or different packages that these guys have raced forever. So my opinion doesn't really matter on that, but I think you'll definitely see a difference from, let's say, the end of last year's Martinsville race compared to tomorrow.
Well, I wouldn't say there's it just depends. This track just depends on, sometimes we come in the spring, it's really cold. Sometimes we come here in the spring, it's really warm. And same thing goes with the fall. So I would say that doesn't really it's Martinsville. But for me personally, it's just this track style is difficult for finding a rhythm. So, yeah, like I said, it's just I try to spend practice of, learning as much as I can and getting into a rhythm. It's just difficult, but I enjoy it.
Racing down has become a point of conversation in the NASCAR garage for the last few weeks. Hunter Nemechek, who's been through the ringer of all 3 series, gave his perspective.
Considering you've been through the ladder a couple times, between the Truck Series, O'Reilly, and so on, Carson Osafar said last weekend that, at least from a prospect standpoint, when you're running those O'Reilly races and truck races, it's kind of like, as a prospect, you're being looked at based on what you do against the Cup drivers as compared to the regulars. So I just, at least one of your perspective, do you feel that's at least an accurate statement from your experience, or is it more just situational based?
I think both. I think with the Cup drivers able to run more races now, there's definitely more of a comparison. You go back to the 2000s and whatnot when guys were running full time in both series, and you look at the result sheets and things of that sort. It's hard. It's hard to beat those guys. There's a reason that those guys are in the Cup series of where they're at. But from my sake, yes, I got compared to the Cup guys every single weekend that I was in an O'Reilly in an O'Reilly car or in a truck. So I definitely think you get compared against those guys, but at the same time, you got to win a lot of races, in my opinion. You have to be good. Your potential has to be good. You have to be able to maximize in a lot of different areas in order to kind of show that.
Still a week till the NASCAR Cup Series has its Easter off week, but Ross Chastain took advantage of some downtime this week to take a trip to New York City for some hoops.
Ross, how was your Nick game experience?
It was awesome. Ben Walton, a guy I worked with at MMI, went with me, and I don't know a lot of the players. He was explaining players that had moved teams recently and did not expect it to be as good of a game as it was. So Pelicans put up a heck of a fight, and it was, I've just never had that kind of an experience on the court, sitting front row under the basket, and just getting to take in another live sport. I think that's what's so great about live sports is I didn't know the plays they were running. I could see the coach just off to my left, calling plays, and the players talking to each other and setting up plays and route, the way they were trying to score. And I didn't know what they were doing, but it was awesome to see from way below their sight line for once. I've usually been up in the rafters.
Did the atmosphere of Madison Square Garden surprise you at all? Because I remember when you were at Gateway, you went to the Cardinals game and you were surprised with the attendance. Obviously, MSG, it's packed out every single game, no matter if the Knicks are good or bad.
Yeah, it was, and the Knicks, they took care of us, and it was a once in a lifetime probably for me experience. So I don't know that I'll ever get to replicate that again, but it was incredible, and seeing the pictures on the wall and I had done research before about who all has played there, and I didn't scratch the surface of everybody, but the greats have performed there, and they were talking about the concert coming up the very next night and getting the Garden switched over for that. So pretty incredible how many world-renowned names and acts and teams have played there. So it was Ben and I, we were we couldn't believe that we were there. And they were taking such good care of us. It was like when we bring people into the VIPs into the garage and sit them up on the pit box. It was next level.
Tim Moore, Motorsports Today, coming at you from Martinsville Speedway as it's time for the Cookout 400 here this Sunday afternoon at Martinsville Speedway. The track is quiet right now, and I think it's time at least for me to show you guys at least what is a typical bucket list item, of course, when we come to Martinsville Speedway. Now, if you watched the show, oh goodness, it was back on Monday, I had said, you know what, there is one thing that I'm most excited for, and that was to try a Martinsville hot dog. Now, yesterday, they gave us hot dogs in the media center, and truthfully, I've told by many that it is very different when you go get it from the stand rather than when they bring it in there. So I have the Martinsville hot dog. As you can see, it's all primed and ready for the chili. And this right here is going to be my first taste, my first reaction to a Martinsville hot dog. So right now, at least, it looks like it has some chili, some good old slaw, and the mustard mixed in. It may have something else in it, I forget, but the hot dogs, you know, good old red and everything, should be very, very interesting. Let's just get into it. Let's try it out. Martinsville hot dog. First, I guess you could say true bites of the weekend. That is significantly better than what I had in the media center, I'll tell you that. That's not a dig. That's pretty darn good. I'm definitely, as everybody knows, at least the Motorsports Day, I am not a hot dog guy, so for me to get this pretty good compliments, I would say this is pretty darn good. And by the way, I can't show it to you down, but Martinsville, I mean, so cheap. 4 hot dogs for $7. It's like a bundle of, like, I think 8 for $11. I mean, just ultimately cheap, really good food, and I get the addiction. So, get more Motorsports today. That'll wrap up things, at least here in the pre-race. But the Martinsville hot dog, I give it an approval. We'll see you after the race.
Driver, start your engine!
The past few races, especially Martinsville, showed an upswing for both Hendrick and JGR, including Ty Gibbs, who had another great short track run en route to a 4th place finish, sits 6th in points, and is hoping for that first win.
Obviously, like, just changing some things up and adding some key players to the team has been really important, and also just working hard on my end, doing a really good job with my my nutritional side, my sleep, and just everything, getting ready to be good at driving race cars.
Two more guys. Is the mentality that if you just keep rolling off the top 5s, that's how you eventually get that win?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're pretty close, but just need a little bit more. Yeah, I think, if you keep playing up there, you're going to win eventually, so just keep adding to it and keep running good, and go knock off that win and go hopefully get a couple wins this year.
As is customary, seemingly every time NASCAR heads to Martinsville, Virginia, elbows were out and cars were beaten and battered post-race. A big crash involving Bubba Wallace and Carson Hocevar claimed a few, and then late contact between the dominant car of the day, Denny Hamlin, who led 292 laps, and Ryan Blaney, who was making another charge through the field, sent the 12 car into the wall. Both Blaney and Hamlin weighed in on the incident after the race on pit road.
Unfortunately, it's the way it goes sometimes. I mean, yeah, it is a bummer for sure, working our way up there and getting to restart in the top couple rows and stuff like that, and then it kind of goes south quick. But yeah, that part's unfortunate for sure.
The move with Blaney, he thought it was unnecessary from his seat. What did you see from that?
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree.
Despite Blaney's misfortune, it was a big-time bounce back for his Penske teammate Joey Logano, who ended up 3rd after being mired in the 30s last week at Darlington, and Logano gave props to his team.
It's just a tough team, right? I mean, it's a bunch of, to be honest, a bunch of old guys have been doing this for a long time. Let's just be honest. So that seems to help a lot of times when you have a struggling weekend. You just you have the hard conversations, you have the heart-to-hearts that needed to happen, and you move forward as a team. And I think this team knows how to do that.
Chase Elliott was stuck around 10th most of the day, but his crew chief Alan Gustafson pitted him early, which ended up reaping heavy benefits with a timely caution. Elliott got to the front, held off Denny Hamlin, and claimed another win for Hendrick Motorsports at the Paperclip, the first win for Hendrick in 2026.
Chase, I just want to follow up on that, at least for you. Now, this would be your 3rd win in Martinsville, if you count back in the Truck Series. What are you going to do with 3rd clock?
I don't know. That's a good question. They got a new one. They're actually really nice. I don't know if you saw it, but it looked super cool. So I didn't know they changed manufacturers, but that's kind of neat to get the first one of the new manufacturer, and that's a pretty big deal. So great trophy though. It really is. Cool to. Great honor to have one, and much less have two now is pretty special. So I don't know what I'm gonna do with it, but we'll figure it out. Good problem to have for sure.
And then in terms of the strategy, you end up jumping Denny and so on. But how hard was it when cars started coming back on fresher tires to kind of mitigate that time loss? Because at points it seemed like you were kind of getting shuffled out into that second groove. So kind of bring me through what your mindset was there, and again, how hard was it to kind of mitigate what could have been a potential loss?
Yeah, I mean, I think at that point in time, you're really just trying to think about just total cumulative, big picture, right? Like what's going on in the big picture. Well, those guys are 1 stopping, we're 2 stopping. Like we weren't going to just hold the lead the whole time. I knew that, kind of going into that whole deal as soon as I figured out what was happening. We're not talking about this the whole time, but once it kind of went on and everybody had an idea of what, direction that they were in, I was just trying to make the most time I could, and making pace at the end of that run cumulatively was going to benefit you or hurt you when you got ready to do your next stop, right? If that thing went green all the way to the end, it was a big cumulative piece of the puzzle, right? And just trying to be as efficient as I could throughout traffic and be efficient getting past all those things. Just efficiency is a really big deal when you start getting in those strategy situations.
Tim Moore, Motorsports Today, wrapping things up here from the spectacular Martinsville Speedway for the Cookout 400 weekend. And let me tell you something. I mean, my oh my, was this one fun, spectacular weekend. Really, to be honest with you, when it came into the race, we talked about the horsepower, we talked about the tires. We thought we were going to learn something, right? And, well, ultimately, the ultimate lesson is, no matter how tough things may be for Hendrick Motorsports, there's one thing for certain. They are the best team, if not one of the best teams in NASCAR. They have that respect for a reason. That's right. I mean, listen, Chase Elliott won this race, and sure, he wasn't the fastest car. Sure, they may have ran 10th throughout the day, and they didn't show significant pace. But another big clutch move by crew chief Alan Gustafson, which, by the way, Alan, this one's for you. Because, let me tell you something. Overall, for Chase Elliott, you thought that things were going south. A lot of fans said, this is it. Chase hasn't won a lot of races. Yes, the points format may help, but ultimately, they're not going to win a lot of races, and Hendrick's in a lot of trouble. Yet Chase said to me on Saturday, listen, we're not going to focus on the 45. We need to focus on ourselves. We know what it needs to be, and we know what it takes to be successful to ultimately win a championship. And really, again, for Hendrick, this is what happens. You look back at Phoenix last year, Kyle Larson wins the championship, Cliff Daniels, big call, Alan Gustafson, big call. Darn, people talk about Alex Bowman back in the wins. You think about the Chicago Street Course. That was a big call by Blake Harris. And my point is this, and of course, as well, Rudy Fugle, how many times have we seen him make big calls? Hendrick Motorsports has some of the smartest people, reigning teams in charge for a reason. And ultimately, that was the deciding factor. Denny Hamlin dominated. Yeah, there could be a little bit of beef with him, Ryan Blaney. You'll hear that on the show. But ultimately, the story of the day and the tale of this Martinsville weekend is sure, okay, the racing, we didn't learn much about this horsepower package. It didn't really look much different. But ultimately, when it's all said and done, the thing that we do know is that Chase Elliott is not just a NASCAR Cup Series winner in 2026, but Hendrick Motorsports, they're coming back, and they're going to try to make it back-to-back championships. And I think that's what people need to start paying attention to, because, yeah, they may not have the speed, but that's what sparked things back at Kansas last season to Kyle Larson's eventual championship. So from Tim Moore here in Martinsville, the final time, it's been a good one. I'll see you at Kansas next.
Chase Elliott winning at Martinsville, and Alan Gustafson, as Tim mentioned earlier, Tropper, he gets a lot of flack. Understandably so, with the way some races have gone. But I feel like there's a deal, and I don't think this is really a hot take or anything. We talk so much about crew chiefs losing races for drivers, and crew members and pit crews losing races for drivers. And we've seen that happen a lot of times throughout the years. We don't talk that often when they win races for drivers. And Alan Gustafson made a gamble, and it ended up paying off. Now, was this necessarily like he knew this was going to be a winning strategy? Of course not, because there's rarely cautions at Martinsville with the next-gen car. And frankly, it was a weird caution in the first place. I don't even think it should have been a caution in the first place, but it was. And because they made that gamble, when the car was mired back in 10th all race, it pays off with the 9 car in victory lane. And you got to give props to a guy who had a lot of success through the 2000s with Jeff Gordon, a guy who had a lot of success with Mark Martin when he was 50 years old and almost won a championship with Hendrick, and now 10 years into Chase Elliott's career. Yes, he's had some bad moments. Yes, he threw away a Coke 600 for Chase Elliott a few years ago with a really bad strategy, but on this particular Sunday, Alan Gustafson's strategy is the reason that Chase Elliott and Hendrick Motorsports have their first win of 2026.
So I'll preface this by saying, if you go back to the early days of motorsports today, we probably have to check the graph at 1,000 post under Eddie, but we ranked top crew chiefs at the time. And I don't even think I had Alan Gustafson on my modern Mount Rushmore. I respected him, don't get me wrong. He's long tenured, but I never thought of him as that guy. And yes, as Tim said, I understand why he gets a lot of hate sometimes, but if you've been able to prove yourself in the Cup Series for what, 20 years now, maybe more, you deserve to be there and you're clearly doing something right. And yeah, Hendrick hasn't had the most speed, but you have Chase Elliott, a championship caliber driver. You have Motorsport Resources. First off, this win was bound to happen. But I mean, just in terms of specific strategy, track position is paramount here. And obviously, sketchy caution. I still feel gutted for Denny considering how much he dominated that race. I mean, let's talk about that first half. I think the first 250 laps, he looked like 244.
Yeah.
It was absolutely insane. So credit where credit is due. And frankly, depending on the caution, he probably should have won. But once again, that's just NASCAR. That's just racing sometimes. Here we are. And what he needed to do, he made right call. You got Chase Elliott up. And with an extra car, you can blame it on the lack of capacity at Martinsville, but you can also put it on driver talent. All the pieces came together, and that's really all.
Yeah, it was a really good drive for Chase Elliott, really good crew chief call. But TCB, as Tropper said, let's talk about Denny Hamlin for a second, because this is someone who, as a driver / owner, had won 5 of the first 6 races of the season, came into this weekend, as Tim said, a lot of motivation. It's a home race. It's a track that I'd say outside of Pocono is still his best track on the schedule, dating back to the early days of his career in that 11 car before Joe Gibbs Racing even became a Toyota team. And I mean, he looked dominant, gets the pole really fast through the early stages of the weekend, and then just an untimely caution ends up with the 9 car in front. And I mean, I know Denny Hamlin already has a win this year, but still a disappointing miss for the 11 team on what was otherwise, I'd say, a really good day for the Toyota camp. I mean, Ty Gibbs, the top 5, even if it was a down day for 2311, you got to really still feel very confident if you're a Hamlin fan that now he is showing significant speed on multiple different track types early in this season as he still fights for that first career championship.
You know, you make a really good point there, Eddie, at the end of that. I was definitely thinking at the end of last season that Hamlin was going to have that second place curse. Like, if you look back in the past, guys that finished second place in points, they usually have a curse and they have a bad year the next year. Hamlin has not at all had a bad year. Yes, the first maybe 2 to 3 races did not play out right, but I mean, we're talking 2 super speedways and then a road course. And then Hamlin came out swinging and won Vegas and then obviously ran good the past couple of weeks. With that being said, to lead over half the race definitely still shows Denny Hamlin is still all here. He is still all in, and he is at the top of his game still. I still can't even believe that next year might be his last year, being that he's still winning. I mean, almost week in and week out, honestly. But I mean, he's up front every single week. He's winning multiple races a year, and to think that possibly next year could be his last year is really just surprising. And I personally hope it's not. I've come around to like Denny Hamlin, and I like to see Denny Hamlin win. I think the sport does great when Denny wins and when he runs good. So hopefully he doesn't retire next year. But dating back to this race, man, devastating that yellow came out. I was like in a house that was a lot was going on, so I didn't really hear what the yellow was for. They never showed anything, so I was a little bit conspiracized on that one. But yeah, just absolutely devastating that he couldn't get the win or catch Chase through live traffic and win the race.
Yeah, so Tim, you were at the track. Give us a little more insight on that caution and then how it played out with Chastain at the front.
Yeah, so realistically, the reason why the caution ultimately came out was a couple laps, I think it was about 2 laps before that. Ty Dillon had sorry, as I'm going through wide corners here, so I'm going to try to hold my camera up. Ty Dillon had pretty much a brake fire going on in the right front, and what happened is it started because ultimately his brakes pretty much like exploded, like we've seen in the past when guys lose their brakes. And ultimately parts of the car or I should say the brake in particular, was pretty much burning off the car and falling onto the track. And while the drivers exactly didn't see the brake rotor, I know, for example, we talked to Joey Logano post-race, and he had mentioned, what he didn't really know what brought out the caution, but that was the reason why NASCAR felt that the rotor could have caused something. And in all fairness, just a reminder that a few weeks ago, we saw a bunch of tire problems in a couple instances and other things because of a brake rotor exploding. So while, yes, it is a little bit controversial, I guess you could say, from NASCAR, I do feel that they were trying to be a little bit more careful considering of what happened in recent circumstances, which is why I'm not saying I'm siding with them on the caution, but they felt that he dropped enough on the racetrack that they had to take care of it, which to me, safety and making sure that the cars aren't accidentally getting destroyed because of something on the racetrack, I think is the right call ultimately.
Drew, I want to get your thoughts as well here for Chase Elliott, because I saw a stat that I almost couldn't believe, but then I thought about it and it's true. Race 7 is actually the earliest in a season that Chase Elliott has ever won in the NASCAR Cup Series in his career. He's won in April and May before. He's never won in March before. So an early jump, obviously, he couldn't get that when getting a win locked you into the playoffs. And of course, there were a couple of years where he could have really used that. But in any event, I mean, in consistency's sake and finishing's sake, he's been the best Hendrick car so far this season. He was the highest in points even before this run. He'd been really competitive. We all know how close he was to winning the Daytona 500. He had great run at Las Vegas, ran well at Phoenix, was in the mix at Atlanta. It's been a really good start for this 9 team. And I mean, I wouldn't say there's a ton of pressure on Chase Elliott, but when he sees Larson with the confetti last year becoming a 2-time champion, and he's won his 2 after Chase Elliott won his first, not saying the clock is ticking, but there's certainly some sort of pressure for Chase because there is that rivalry, of course, in the team between those two for who's going to be the number 1 guy. And when Chase Elliott hasn't won a championship in 5 years, hasn't really been a championship threat, I'd say, since 2022, there's certainly pressure mounting for that 9 team. So to get a win this early in the season and to have it on the back of a Gustafson call and have a lot of camaraderie and chemistry with your crew chief this early in the year, I think it's just great all around for the 9 team.
Yeah, I actually picked him as my person to fall off the most this year. And obviously he's proven me wrong. I mean, he had a chance at Vegas to win and came up a little bit short. It's kind of, I feel like this race was kind of the complete opposite. I felt like Chase was faster at Vegas, but just couldn't really get close enough with the dirty air. And I felt like this race at Martinsville, Denny Hamlin had the faster car, but with all the lap traffic, he was never able to really give himself a shot to get back to Chase. But I feel like you said, this is the earliest Chase has won. I feel like he struggled earlier in the year, and he's kind of been behind his teammates. And I feel like it's been that way ever since he won his championship in 21. I feel like he hasn't been the greatest with the next gen. I feel like he was really good in the Gen 6. But he continues to show he's really good at the play tracks. He's won Atlanta. He almost won Daytona. So this is a step in the right direction for Chase Elliott. And going back to the Gustafson, it's there's been so much hate on him, and for him to make the right strategy call, I feel like Chase Elliott could really put himself up in that big 3 with Denny Hamlin and Tyler Reddick.
Yeah, and I mean, I'd throw Blaney in there as well. I think those 4 probably have been the standout drivers so far this season. One more storyline I want to touch on from Martinsville, because kind of in between all of that, so you had this caution come out. It's really a 10-lap stretch that was the telling story of this race. So Ross Chastain stays out on old tires. Chase Elliott cycles in front of everybody because of the Gustafson call. And then you get a lot of aggression and stack-ups on this restart, understandably so, because it's the one time everybody gets evened back out. And then Bubba Wallace and Carson Hocevar have this incident in the middle of the field that ends up with this big wreck where both Connor Zilisch and Zane Smith think they get injured in the wreck, and Zane Smith thinks he's broke his foot, and both their cars continued. So a very bizarre wreck. Bubba Wallace, takes takes the blame for it afterwards. Very weird to see Carson Hocevar on the other end of one of those types of incidents, the way the last few years have gone. But Tim, before we let you get back to your drive, just your takeaways from what went down between Bubba and Hocevar. As Bubba fell 8 spots in the standings from 3rd to 11th just a day after you and him had a very funny interaction.
Yes, well, I apologize that you're going to have to do some editing here, but unfortunately, Bubba, I can't really do any more defending of you on Twitter about you being less of an asshole. After you do something like this here in the closing portion of the race, I mean, I'm just going to put it like this. Listen, we all know 77 has had some payback in some form of way coming to him. And looking back at the onboards from my perspective on it, I think basically the 77 did what he did at Atlanta, but a little bit with a little bit more space, where instead of forcing a middle 3 compared to what he did at Bell, he forced it bottom of 3 and Bubba and got a little bit physical, and Bubba ultimately retaliated at the end of the day. And, you know, Bubba wasn't going to out himself and so on, but it seemed to be very clear. He was frustrated. He got back to him in the center of the corner. And that's what it is. But, see, though, unfortunately for Bubba, and the reason why I just also think, you know, he takes a little bit of accountability. In that moment, he picked a spot, he picked a battle, and he cost himself. And that's like the rule 101, in my opinion. If you're going to wreck somebody, you don't wreck yourself in the process. And unfortunately, Bubba did that, and it cost him big points. And, you know, maybe last year, right, you could do something like that and get away with it, especially if you have a win. I think for the record, like all the way back to a couple of years ago, remember last week, Eddie, how we were talking about how, you know, oh, Tyler Reddick, Chris Buescher going back and forth. You have that sticker, it means more. You can't get away with that in this format anymore. And unfortunately for Bubba, how many points was it? 8 spots in the standings. How many spots in the standings did he lose from this
8.
race?
Yeah, 8. He went 3rd to 11.
I don't remember the exact number. 8.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty meaningful drop. And you also have to remember this last season, and I apologize if I'm lagging, Bubba, you know, had a really good start to the season, and then things fell apart. We're getting to that time in the season where last year this happened, and I'm not saying that's going to happen again, but moments like this is what could dictate to that spiral out of control. So I'm eager to see how Bubba handles this week off and comes back, but I'm not worried about 23-11. Unfortunately, though, the one thing that was also true this weekend, we found their kryptonite, and it was no surprises. To me, in my opinion, Martinsville, despite the horsepower change, the teams that have been good there will continue to remain good there, and it just seems like between Gibbs, Hendrick, and Penske, those are the 3 you have to watch in Martinsville. Again, the fall could be drastically different, but 23-11 and RFK Racing, who I would say are the next closest to, they're going to have to do a lot of gaming if they're going to want to put themselves into this championship mix, especially at these flatter tracks, because they just seem to have nothing base-wise to what those guys have. And also, from the last thing I'll say, from an execution standpoint, because again, it's not just Chase Elliott won a race when he didn't have the best car, but what makes good teams good is when you have to put your hands, or I should say you have to put the ball in somebody's hand that isn't the driver that you could trust to execute. That's where Hendrick Motorsports and Joe Gibbs have the upper edge. It's not just because they build fast cars. It's because most of the time their crew chiefs can make a top decision. And if you wanted to spit that tape, by the way, anybody watching, Kyle Larson won a championship because Cliff Daniels is smart, not because Kyle Larson's a good driver. And sometimes you have to remember that you have to trust the guy. And Chase Elliott said it to me on Saturday. We've got to focus on ourselves, not what those teams are doing. And he proved that to me on Sunday. And again, to me, last year, Kansas, Chase wins the sport. It's good to spark a big amount of success, I think, for Hendrick when we come back from this break, where we could start seeing a turnaround speed-wise.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point on the Cliff Daniels thing at the end, especially. And, you know, again, the big summary from this race, you got to give credit to the crew chief, and that is exactly what Alan Gustafson did to put Chase Elliott in position and get the Dawsonville pool room siren going. Tim, we're going to let you get back to your drive, but thanks for hopping on for a few minutes, and best of luck the rest of the drive home. At least it's a short one compared to Kansas in a few weeks.
Oh, yeah, to say I'll be excited for Kansas in a couple weeks, and I think the mileage triple. I could be wrong. I have to go back and look at the mileage when you look at from what a Martinsville trip is. But look forward to hopefully Martinsville back in the fall. But if you didn't go to the track or you're thinking about going to Martinsville, I will tell you this: even though the service sucks down there, it is a great racetrack to go to. And honestly, surprised me a little bit just because the banking was bigger than like I'd imagine. We called it a flat track. If you walked through pit road, it's like, wow, there's a lot more banking than I thought there was. But I'll leave it at that. What a weekend it was. It was a fun weekend overall.
Yes, it was. And thank you again to NASCAR Kendall Lambert for giving us the opportunity to cover this one and get to our 4th race of the year. So, Tim Moore, great coverage once again. Best of luck the rest of the drive, and we will continue things with the 4 of us. He made a couple really good points, Tyrell, on the Bubba Hocevar thing, just to kind of tie a bow on that, because there were 2 points that I really wanted to make on this show. Number 1 is the fact that I agree. We look at the flat tracks, particularly Martinsville, Phoenix, flat short tracks. Those have been the 2 races where 23XI collectively have been at their weakest this season. And why is that so important? Well, guess what? Those are 2 of the final 3 races for the season. So when you think about Tyler Reddick wanting to win this championship, that's a very crucial point to consider. Another thing, though, that he brought up that I really wanted to get into, because it kind of ties into what I was saying about Chase Elliott, maybe this infighting with Kyle Larson trying to be the superior driver at Hendrick Motorsports. Our tweet of the week: go and look at Inside the Race, the show that Kyle Petty and Steve Letarte do after every week. Because Kyle Petty, and you might be saying, what does Kyle Petty have to do with this? Well, he had a really good take on Bubba Wallace. Now, he said he didn't necessarily think that he wrecked Carson Hocevar because he's scared that he's worse than Tyler Reddick. But I do feel like internally, and Bubba Wallace would never say this publicly, that there has to be at least some sort of agitation that he's almost become forgotten about at 23XI Racing. Like this big interview that Michael Jordan did, this big revealing interview with Gail King. They got her on pit road through this 9-minute interview. It's on CBS News. Michael Jordan's in it. Denny Hamlin's in it. Tyler Reddick's in it. Bubba Wallace is nowhere to be found. And Bubba Wallace was the original driver for the team. Bubba Wallace says pre-Martinsville was 3rd in points. And despite all of that, because he's not winning these races, Reddick is, nobody's really talking about him. So does that cause him to lose his head with Carson Hocevar? Absolutely not. Does that make him more aggressive and potentially frustrated? Yes. And when Bubba Wallace is frustrated, he's the type of driver where that frustration doesn't help, it hurts him, and it leads him to spiral. And as Tim mentioned, Tyrell, we have these tracks coming up where this has been the stretch of the schedule where we've seen this story before, where Bubba Wallace starts a season strong, and then this stretch where you got Kansas and Texas and the first Dega and some short tracks, and he just doesn't really have his best stretch.
Yeah, I've been a Bubba fan for a long time, so I've been like watching, obviously, with a close eye. And Tim did say the right thing there. He does tend to start off really strong, and then he'll have DNF after DNF after DNF, and with this points, you cannot have that. And I was honestly very surprised, which I shouldn't have been because it's still so early in the season. I was very surprised to see him drop from 3rd to 11th. When they showed the original points, I was like, wow, where did he go? And then they flipped to the second page, the 11th. I'm like, oh my God, that's insane. It's great, though. I will say it's great. I absolutely love that the points actually matter. Yeah. Absolutely great. Love that. But to tie a bow on what you said, the whole thing with the interview with Gail King and MJ, Denny Hamlin, and Tyler Reddick, that whole interview will make you think, wow, Tyler Reddick is the only driver for 23XI, right? As a casual fan or someone that was just watching the news that day, they're gonna think this guy is the only driver for Michael Jordan. Wow, he's won 4 races so far out of the 6. This guy is insane. Oh my God! And I want all his merch. I want everything that he has. But then you go on the website and you're like, oh wait, there's 2 other drivers. We don't talk about the 35, but there's 2 other drivers. And then you see Bubba Wallace, you're like, oh wow, he's racing. I didn't know that. You wouldn't know that because, of course, like you said, he's not in the media because he's not winning races, and this is definitely getting inside of his head. I don't care who you are and what you do at work. If Tropper is my coworker and this guy just put out this amazing presentation, and I'm sitting here busting, working 9 to 5, and Tropper comes from 9 to 3, and then at the presentation they show Tropper's work, and I work just as hard as him, and he's sitting in the cubicle next to me, I'm gonna be pissed. So how do you think Bubba feels? This guy's literally the team is working on the car right next to him, and this guy's won 4 races. Bubba hasn't won anything. He's pissed, rightfully so.
Funny enough, I ended up speaking in a class today about all things. I met up with an old professor. I was speaking about my experiences. The presentation might not be far off, but no, I just have to. I have to feel that with I mean, I've always believed that he's had the talent, and if he can own it, I don't know if he could be a championship threat, but definitely. So we saw that. I mean, the points matter. An 8-point dropper, a position gap, I should say, is significant, but at the same time, the beauty of it is for some people wants to get it fast. And I think the wins will come. One of Indy last year. If he can win, I think he can. But I still don't think it's now. Like Denny said, can get a he can spiral a bit, but for some reason I just feel like it's different. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I bite my tongue. But
I don't really know what you said, Trapper, to be completely honest, part of that, but
it's really windy here.
Yeah, no, that's what I gathered from that. But I did understand your point. There's still a lot of races left, and with this format, even if you can lose a bunch of points quick, you can gain them fast too. So that's kind of the luxury of this, and we'll see if Bubba Wallace can have an upswing. But again, my concern is kind of, the structure of this current schedule for him. These upcoming races haven't been his best historically, Drew, but at the same time, we've never seen 23-11 at the level that they currently are in any of their previous 5 years. So how do you kind of see these next few races going for Bubba?
Yeah, I want to go back to real quick. I feel like Bubba has always been the super speedway driver for 23XI. And I feel like with Tyler Reddick winning not just Daytona, but Atlanta back to back, I feel like Bubba kind of took it. I don't know if he took it, I don't want to say personally, but at the same time, he's like, dang, Tyler Reddick's won 2 times at a plate track when Bubba has been known for being a plate track, a really good plate track guy. So I feel like that's something maybe not fully on his mind, but at least in the back of his mind. So, but no, looking forward to the next couple of races. Kansas coming up. He did win in the 45 a couple of years ago. I could see him running solid, but at the same time, when we go, to Bristol, I don't really know what to think. I mean, this is the first time I think Texas is a points race in how many years? 3 years. So it's gonna be interesting to see how he can kind of handle himself. And I know that Bubba is gonna give himself a chance at Talladega. He always runs up front. He's always gonna give himself himself a good shot at the end. So he could either be back in the top 5, or I could see him almost out of the playoffs, not playoffs, chase format.
Yeah, so we'll see how it shakes out. Again, it's an off week coming up. We've got Rockingham for Truck Series, O'Reilly Series. Big story there is that Cletus McFarland somehow got an RCR ride and is going to be running in the O'Reilly race. There's also an ARCA East race, and both he and Squirrel will be in that race. Speaking of Squirrel, he raced at Hickory. Crazy race there. Max Reeves kind of got knocked around at the end after being the dominant car and did not have the best post-race interview, to say the slightest, and Tristan McKee ended up with the win. So shout out to Fisher too. We're going to have some pictures from that race on our social media and on our website in the next couple of days. I'm glad we were able to get out to that. So Max Reeves compared himself to Kyle Busch, which was a little crazy for someone who's racing in the ARCA East series, but it provides a good segue to our SeatGeek Diecast of the week this week, because I'm not a Kyle Busch fan. Everybody knows that, but I was counting my diecasts like last year, and I have more Kyle Busch diecasts than any other driver. And that's probably because he had so many different variations of M&M schemes through the year, and he's had so many different really good paint schemes. And this is one of my personal favorites that only ran once. It's a red, white, and blue car. And again, just to make the point, we need more of these back in NASCAR. Kelsey was talking about this on the show a couple of weeks ago, and I completely agree with her. We need more of these Stars and Stripes paint schemes back, these one-off looks. They were
Was it
so
Charlotte?
great through the years. Yes, this was Charlotte,
Okay.
either 2011 or 2012.
Was that the car that he had when the wire went
I
down?
think so. Yes.
Dang,
So
I
I
got
think this
ball
car
knowledge.
only ran like 100 laps ever, but it is a great car. It's one of my Kyle Busch's. Tropper, you can just nod. Do you have this one? Because I know you have a lot of Kyle Busch's. Yeah? All right, cool. But yeah, I have so many M&M's Snickers cars from Kyle Busch from like 2011, 2012, because he had just so many great different variations of paint schemes. I don't have his pedigree car with the dog on it. I used to love that one too. But this is a personal favorite of mine. Literally only ran one race. It's got a red M&M with a Marine hat on the right side. It's got the brown M&M. She doesn't have any sort of hat on, but still cool. And yeah, really cool design. One of my favorites from the Stars and Stripes schemes that used to run Memorial Day weekend that we need to see back. So that's our SeatGeek diecast of the week. Let's transition. I want to touch briefly on IndyCar. Credit to Alex Palou. We're going to have a more in-depth discussion on Friday's show just because we have so much to get to and so much content. We're going to have all of that dropping later in the week. Jeffrey Runka and Casey Shepard were there at Barber. Palou gets the win. I said it on the show on Friday. He was going to get back at it. It's one of his best tracks. He had some real challengers. Christian Lundgaard drove well. Graham Rahal had a really good run and had some really crazy comments after the race too about his haters. He's a very polarizing figure right now in IndyCar, to say the least. Christian Lundgaard got derailed by his own pit crew. Kyle Kirkwood was really fast and still has the points lead, but TCB, I'll go to you first, just quickly. I mean, Alex Palou now 2 wins through 4 races. He's rebounded all the way to second in points after the disaster at Phoenix. There's really just no stopping this guy at these types of tracks, no matter what you try to do.
No, I mean, I believe he won by like 8 or 10 seconds or something like that.
Yeah, it wasn't close.
Yeah,
13.
it was nowhere near close. Oh, 13. Who's counting? But yeah. It seems like this season, if he's not winning, he's wrecking. But when he isn't wrecking, he's winning. And he's just unstoppable. I mean, he's just fast as all get out, man. And like you said, this is one of his best tracks. And I know that unfortunately his win is not going to be the highlight of the weekend. Unfortunately, as we've seen the crash with Scott McLaughlin. I've seen it even on pages that don't even post racing things. But yeah, absolutely. What a great run by him. And just to kind of shrink the points lead to Kirkwood again. Kirkwood also had a great run. I'm really proud of Kirkwood. He's come along a long way, definitely. And to have the points lead still and had Palou just right there, it's going to be a good battle going into the next couple of races and going into the month of May.
Yeah, and it's been especially good because his other 2 teammates at Andretti just haven't really been that great. Like, I love Marcus Ericsson, but it's weird. An F1 driver who I'd say he's at his best at ovals. He's really not that much of a threat at road courses or street courses, and Will Power just can't stay out of the wall. Outside of Scotty Maxwell, he's crashed in qualifying 2 of the last 3 races. So he has just not helped his cause whatsoever. That Scott McLaughlin crash, like you mentioned, is crazy. I mean, Barber is a weird facility, and we're going to get into it a little more with Jeffrey between the mannequins and spiders. I don't know. I would not want to be at Barber when it's like nighttime and there's no cars around, because it really feels like it could be like a haunted place. And then the fact that you have fences where cars can just split through in the middle of them, I don't know. I don't really understand what happened there. But
can I jump in on that real quick?
Yeah.
I was watching that. I saw the clip on Twitter, and I was showing my girlfriend, and she was like, "Oh my God, like that's crazy." And I was like, "Yeah, it's crazy that there's like it goes track, grass, runoff, fence. Like there's no like big area. It's insane to me that like nobody was thinking with all that room, mind you, behind like the wall. There's still so much room that they could have moved this wall back and put more runoff or even pavement, whatever. But it was just so surprising to me that like it's just like such a little short area. It's as if like a go-kart is supposed to run around there at 70 miles an hour. If they wreck, it's like, okay, he's just stuck in the sand. Like, no, we're talking Indy cars. This guy hit the wall at 170 miles an hour and went through it. So hopefully, when they ever go back to Barber, hopefully they move back that barrier and everything because there's plenty of room to do it. So that was just crazy.
Yeah.
it's kind of hard. I mean, I've been to that track, and I mean, you can kind of see it on the camera. It's kind of hard. I think what they'll have to do is kind of level out that hill because you see where the wall
Right, there was
is,
a
and
hill, yeah.
it goes straight downhill.
Yeah.
So it's like I think they might have to maybe move the hill a little bit, but I 100% agree with you. I mean, all it took is one car to, put his tire off the racetrack, just that little, inch, and his back end instantly slid around. And with how fast these Indy cars are going into turn one, gravel isn't going to stop their car. I mean, you see it at let's say the F1 car at Silverstone. I mean, they have the gravel there, and they have enough distance. If one car goes spinning around, that car is going to slow down a considerable amount. I mean, they might hit the wall at 30, 40 miles per hour, but I mean, this car hit almost 100 miles an hour. And, luckily Scott McLaughlin was okay, but with how he hit the wall and, how his back end kind of stepped up, it could have been a lot worse. So, glad that he was okay. And, like you said, hope they make these adjustments and, just so the safety is a little better next year.
Certainly the craziest wreck we've seen in motorsports so far, at least out of the 3-week cover in 2026. Tropper, before you take the train, I'm going to try you one more time. Hopefully nobody's asking you for money right now or anything. But I want to get your thoughts because you're the one who pointed out this Graham Rahal clip to me, because Graham Rahal said some wild things the last few months, has a very particular opinion on the Washington, D.C. race. But then basically just says that he reads Twitter every night and that people are calling him out that he's bad at qualifying. Like, he's too much in his own head. He's too obsessed with these people. Just go out and run your races, and I'll guarantee you'll have better results. I mean, he's had a decent start to the season. He's been better, certainly, than Louis Foster and Mick Schumacher. And he had a really good run. He was second to Palou for much of the first half of the race, but just leave it at that. Like, that whole thing to me, Tropper, just felt so unnecessary.
Was unnecessary, but if you have to shut up the haters, you might as well do it with good results, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, I see where he's coming from. It's kind of funny, little clickbait worthy, admittedly, but I understand the point. But at the same time, as a racer, you're a professional. Your job is to literally to put your head down and drive, and it comes down to like a few years. It is hard to kind of race and forget about what the entire world is saying, especially if it's negative. But at the same time, that's your job. So, I mean, his name is in between ownership, so maybe he's not as worried about losing the ride. Granted, he is running well. On top of that, the DC comments and everything, maybe he's just trying to get more fans and create a show for TVs. But regardless, I mean, I guess. Tell me you heard at least like.
I heard about 60% of that, so I'm pretty impressed.
The only thing that I didn't hear was the ending. So I mean, you can also kind of read lips. So we're chilling.
Yeah.
Honestly, good enough. If you need me to go, honestly, if the wind is too bad, I got to go take a train anyway. So this might be my
I don't want to
cue.
make you sit in the cold, and you got people trying to ask you for money, and then you got your duffel bag.
Have you seen the day-to-night progression? Me putting on the coat, like
I know it's been like beautiful. I love watching the sunset behind you, Tropper.
It was
You're
great
glistening.
an hour ago, but you know what? My time has come. So enjoy the rest of the show.
Yes, Tropper. Safe travels. We will talk to you.
Thank you
Enjoy
very
Monday
much.
Night Raw.
Yeah.
Yep, right here, guys. MSG. I'll see you.
Say it, Trapper. All right. Well, and then there were 3, but
exactly.
Now everybody in like normal rooms and stuff for the last 20 minutes. That's perfect. But yeah, so Alex Palou gets the win in IndyCar. We're gonna have our full compilation dropping on Thursday. Jeffrey's gonna be on the show for Friday, and we're gonna dive a little deeper into everything from Barber because coming up is a really big 2 months for IndyCar after these first 4 races. You got Long Beach. Then you got the month of May at Indianapolis. So a lot of fun times ahead. I'm just glad that there's momentum instead of just like 1 or 2 races. There's been 4 already. There's a sample size before the month of May. So been a fun start to the season with 4 very unique tracks. Let's finish with Formula One though, guys. Kimi Antonelli wins at Japan. Second win for him. Youngest ever championship points leader in Formula One. Oscar Piastri with a big time bounce back after we really called him out on the show last week. Ends up in the top 3, ends up back on the podium after he didn't complete a lap through the first 2 races of the season. Lewis Hamilton with an excellent run. battling with George Russell all race long. But there's two things to take away from this race. Well, one of them, actually, there's three. I got to say, shout out Kimi Antonelli, because, I mean, regardless of how you feel about the package or whatever, with these two top teams, Ferrari and Mercedes, I think anybody you asked going into the season would have said Antonelli was at best third of those four drivers. The only person you were putting him ahead of was Lewis Hamilton. And right now, he's ahead of all of them. So he's running great. 2 wins, and now we'll see out of the break if that momentum can continue. But there's two real stories out of this race. The first one, we talk about big crashes. Ollie Behrman, really hard hit. Hopefully he's not too banged up. They said no fractures, but pretty much went almost over 100 miles an hour. They said a 50G impact into the wall, and it was avoiding Franco Colapinto. And this wreck would not have happened without the regulation changes. And this is what frustrates me, because it brings me back to with the next gen car, which thankfully this was fixed, but the first year, all of the injuries, all the issues with the fires, Kurt Busch having a career-ending concussion, Alex Bowman and Cody Ware getting hurt and having to miss races because the car wasn't safe enough and wasn't ready, and because of problems directly caused by the car. And we complain about the racing, but the real deal is safety here too. And now the same thing rears its ugly head in Formula One. Not only is the racing manufactured, and you got these like restrictor plate style battles for the lead, now you have, because of the engines peaking and shutting down the hybrid engines, you have these ridiculous closing rates. And that was the reason this wreck even happened. Franco Colapinto was out of power, he maxed out, his car starts going slow, and Ollie Behrman has this ridiculous closing rate, has to try to avoid him, ends up spinning and slamming into the wall. So on top of the fact that the racing just feels fake, now you have real injuries and bad crashes happening exclusively, Tyrell, because of this package.
Yeah, like you said, I can't stand the batteries maxing out and saving the battery and stuff. I cannot stand it. Oh my God. But yes, like you said, the closing rates are ridiculously fast now, and he had to swerve. It was either he ran into the back of him and got airborne, or he swerved to avoid him. And unfortunately, they both have a bad ending to him.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, he honestly, I think he chose a better route. It's sad to say, but F1 has definitely taken the entertainment route, and I know everyone. You look on any comment section, you see it everywhere. Everyone is like WWE, or they're like NASCAR back in like the early 2020s. They're taking the entertainment route. And unfortunately, when you take the entertainment route, there's consequences. And unfortunately, when consequences happen, usually people get hurt because it's racing. And thankfully, I hope that he's not hurt. But I mean, you've got to, at some point, F1 has to start listening to the drivers, right? I know a few weeks ago I said nothing's going to change. And, I know we're going to talk about Verstappen and everything too. But eventually things are going to have to change. I mean, we can't keep going through this every week with somebody, especially at Spa or something, going down the straightaway after El Rouge. Somebody maxes out of power, and then they're 3 wide, and somebody has to swerve and avoid, and we have a huge, massive wreck, and God forbid something happens. We can't keep doing this. We can't keep putting entertainment in front of everything else. Safety is number one in racing, and the racing product comes second. Entertainment will come naturally. So F1 eventually, just like I said, will have to either they're basically dying on the sword right now. They're gonna have to do something about it. They're gonna have to take the sword out and pass themselves out, because this is not good. F1 fans hate it, drivers hate it, and it's unsafe at this point right now.
Yeah. And Drew, Tyrell made a good point. When we look at, we're not even at the dangerous tracks yet. We got Spa. We saw what happened
Monza.
to Colapinto with the old package at Sao Paulo. Both of those tracks are still waiting later in the year. You mentioned Monza too. We got the crazy tracks still to come. And I just don't know, with the long straightaways, the crazy braking zones, how this is even going to work.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's like we go to these tracks where you have the DRS zones, or it's overtake zones, whatever, it doesn't matter anymore. But when you're going from 200 miles an hour to 80 miles per hour, I mean, let's take two corners for the long backstretch after El Rouge at Spa, and then you go into that fast little right left, or left right, whatever, it doesn't matter. Say someone makes that little thing. All it takes is someone to go like this, clip a tire, and they go spinning into a barrier. Then, you not even turn one at Monza. You'd go down the backstretch, going into the backstretch chicane, or not chicane, it's like the little fast corner. But all it takes is for, someone with a closing speed of 20 miles per hour faster than the car ahead of them, because, you save battery and you pass somebody by burning your battery and then save battery. It's just fake racing. I mean, it's just like you guys said. I mean, you guys, said it perfectly. It's just for entertainment. I think F1 was so concerned about, DRS trains, and even if you had DRS, it is impossible to pass even if you have fresher tires. So they tried to do the best thing possible for the racing and to make all these, overtakes happen. So I like that F1 is trying different things, but going back to Barber, the safety is the most important thing. When all it takes is for one little mistake, especially with, being super early into the season, there are going to be more crashes. I mean, we've seen so many DNFs, so many failures. I'm really worried when we go to these, these faster tracks.
And you also have to think there are drivers who are holding it back right now and aren't giving their full 100% just because they're new to this and they're trying to figure it out. I don't know if they're fully max out every race because they just don't know, because it's all new. And as they get more comfortable with the system, and when they want to save battery, when they want to use battery, maybe that'll help them mitigate mistakes, but it's also going to just create more action, yes, but at the same time, danger. And with these closing rates, it can get very nerve-wracking at some tracks. And the other level to this, and what we'll finish with, is this rumor that Max Verstappen wants to retire now because he's upset about the package. Now, let me just say this. Is part of this just Max Verstappen being butthurt because now he's driving a slow car? Yes, absolutely. But at the same time, it's very bad for F1 when Max Verstappen, who has been your star for the last 5 years and is probably the most recognizable name in the sport besides Lewis Hamilton, is considering retirement at 28 years old, specifically because the car and the racing is bad and he sees it as fake now. Because what Max Verstappen views, and I think it's a very fair view for him to have, is that with the past cars, even last year when he had a slow car, it was still in the driver's hands to a pretty high extent with the old car, and we saw Max Verstappen pull out a second place out of his you-know-what and end up almost winning the championship and rally from 100 points back even with a bad car. That is just not possible with this current car because there's such a gap between the haves and the have-nots, and because of the fake racing, it's impossible to even get any sort of advantage. So all of the frustration that Max Verstappen has, well, again, some of it I think is just him being upset because he's never been in this predicament before. A lot of it's valid. And for someone who goes and races at Nürburgring, someone who races on iRacing, does all these random things, we could easily see Max Verstappen side questing to another series. Would it be NASCAR or IndyCar? I don't think so. I think there would be a better chance that it would be WEC or something. But we could easily see Max Verstappen just go and do something else. And if Formula One, Tyrell, loses a star because of this package, it's just yet another reason why this is a failure.
I'm going to break this down into about 3 levels. What you said is absolutely right. I totally agree. And also going back to one of my points from earlier, fabricated racing, like we're in the WWE era now, entertainment racing, right? I want to say this, F1, like I said, they need to fix this, yes. But I think they are in their own way, obviously. And I think what they tend to realize or not realize, as in basketball and any other sport that you see, any other major sport, they think that they are just the sole thing. Like, that's it. Like, they are the pinnacle. And I think F1 thinks that they are kind of the pinnacle of racing. But I think they think that there's no other racing discipline. And this is like the top one. And like, no one will leave. Max is not going to leave. If Max leaves, we'll just put somebody else in the car. But they're not thinking about the repercussions that it could take from this. I mean, like you said, Max Verstappen he's going to be a legend in the sport, right? I mean, he's won so many races, championships, we could read his accolades for 8 years. If he leaves this sport because of what F1 is doing and because of the racing, that says a lot about F1. And if they don't change this, once again, going back to my point, they're not listening to the drivers. And if you don't listen to drivers, what's going to happen? They're going to walk away, and then you're going to have to try to build the sport all over again. You're going to have a bunch of 18-year-olds running, and they're all going to be wrecking and everything, and no one's going to know who anyone is. Lewis is probably going to retire, and Sergio Perez is going to go do something else. But now bringing it back to level 3, what you just also said, Eddie. I do see him honestly going to WEC. You see he does a lot of endurance racing. He could go to WEC. He could maybe do IMSA. I think NASCAR is like 3rd or 4th on the bottom of that list there. IndyCar maybe even over it. That's another thing there. Like there's so many different other racing disciplines that he could do because he does so many random things. The iRacing, the endurance racing. There's so many different disciplines and options that he has. And honestly, I could see him if Trackhouse decides to bring out Project 91 again. I mean, they got Red Bull. Why not have him do a race or go somewhere else? I mean, it's not F1 is not the end all be all. Like they just need to listen to drivers and fix it.
Yeah, and for anyone who's saying this is not a big deal, and I mean, Nico Rosberg left and the sport was fine. Max Verstappen is very different from Nico Rosberg. Max Verstappen is one of the greatest drivers in F1 history. Simply put, he is top 5 all time, and I don't think anybody can dispute that. Argue with the wall. Max Verstappen has already reached that feat. And again, for someone who, like him, has the options because he's already been seeking out other stuff through all this other time, to be even considering or putting to media the fact that he is considering retirement at 28 years old, Drew, is completely ridiculous when you consider the fact that this package has just been so problematic, and this is just another level to it.
Yeah, I've seen I've seen a tweet. I'm not 100% sure if it's fake or not, but Max Verstappen listed the series that he would like to partake in if after he's done with F1. I believe WEC was on there. I think not is WRC one of them? I don't think he wants to do that.
I think I know what you're talking about. I think it was WEC, IMSA, and I forgot what the third was. And I know they were like NASCAR and IndyCar. They said no.
Yeah, exactly. So it might be the GT3 cars. I mean, because he's been doing. Last year he ran the GT3 cars at the Nürburgring. I don't think it was in an actual race. Maybe it was. I think it might have been practice though. But
that was the thing when he used the fake name, I think. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I mean, he showed interest and done all these things. What I'd like to see Max Verstappen maybe try his hand at NASCAR. Of course, I mean it would bring a lot of recognition to NASCAR and bring some new fans in. But at the same time, I just don't think Max Verstappen, even in a one-off race, would do all that. So it's going to be interesting. F1 kind of has to get their head straight. I think Max Verstappen also, I wouldn't say he's kind of like Carson Hocevar in like the sense that he's like he does it all for clicks, but at the same time, he's done so much for F1. I feel like once he won that championship over Lewis, taking away his 8th championship, that was kind of maybe like the passing of the torch. Maybe not that season, maybe the season where he won 20 of the races. But I mean, he is the face of F1. He's been that way ever since he won those 4 titles. So for F1 to lose their big star, that'd be a pretty big thing. But before we move on, I just want to touch up on something. Give another shout out to Kimi Antonelli. Yeah. He youngest F1 champion leader of all time. He's been really good in the races. He's qualified on pole the last 2 races. I think the one thing that I want to touch up on, though, that he kind of has to improve is those starts. I know that the Ferrari and the McLaren, they're just better at starts. I mean, you've seen George Russell lose position. You've seen Kimi Antonelli lose positions. And Ferrari's always leading after turn 1. Maybe not this time because they were so far back compared to the McLarens, but they continue to, get these good starts. And with how this overtaking is, McLaren and Mercedes have been able to overtake. So I'm looking forward to see if, Mercedes can improve there, but really, really impressed with what Kimi Antonelli has been able to do so far this year.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to sum it up. Kimi Antonelli deserves a lot of credit. And again, yeah, he's had the bad starts, but he also rebounded really well in that race too. Maybe part of that's because Mercedes long run has the best car this year, but credit to him. He's only 19 years old. We have seen people his age make tons of mistakes over the last 10, 20 years that have gotten these opportunities in F1. And I mean, the only drivers that I can think of that have started off this well as teenagers in the last 20 something years, Fernando Alonso, Lewis Hamilton, and Max Verstappen, that's pretty good company. And we know what all three ended up achieving later in their careers. So shout out to Kimi Antonelli and a great start to the season. Again, F1 off throughout April because of the 2 canceled races. They will be back at it in Miami in May, and we'll see if there's any changes following this Behrman wreck. But that's going to do it for this episode of Motorsports Today. Reminder, if you haven't checked out any of our coverage from this past weekend, we had reporters at 3 different races, NASCAR, IndyCar, and ARCA. Thanks to everybody who made that possible. We're going to have more coverage from IndyCar dropping this week. Jeffrey Hrunka is going to be on the show to break down a little more of Barber on Friday. But for Tim Moore in his car, Adam Tropper in New York City getting hustled for money, Tyrell Baker, Drew Jewah, Eddie Kalegi signing off of this episode of Motorsports Today, and we will talk to you again on Friday.